So what FOIL stands for is when you're multiplying a binomial times another binomial, you will have to multiply the first terms. So the F stands for multiplying the first terms. You'll have to multiply the outside terms. So the O stands for outside. You'll have to multiply the inside terms. And finally, you'll have to multiply the last terms. So FOIL is just to help us remember that we multiply our first terms, our outside terms, our inside terms, and our last terms. And it's the same idea with the arrows like you did for distribution when in grade 9 you just had one thing out in front and that got distributed. Now when you have two things out, everything is getting distributed to the second one. So when we multiply our first ones, the blue arrow there, 3x times x will give me 3x squared. When I multiply my outside ones, which is the green arrow, a 3x times a positive 1 will give me positive 3x. The inside ones, a positive 2 times an x, will give me plus 2x. And finally, a positive 2 times a 1 will give me plus 2. Now, after you FOIL, you may notice that there are two terms right here that are like terms. So we're not finished until we simplify completely and combine all of our like terms. So we'll have 3x squared, because there's no like terms with 3x squared. But 3x plus 2x, those are like terms, so they can be added together to get 5x, and then we'll still have plus 2. And this would be our final answer once we've multiplied. So for multiplying binomials, sometimes you'll see the word multiply to begin with that tells you that you'll need to FOIL. Sometimes the command word will be expand. That also tells you that you'll need to FOIL and multiply it out. This is the most common method and the one that we would use the most. There are some other methods that I'll show you as well because they come in handy in different places. This is the method that's sort of based on algebra tiles. It's called the chart method. We're going to do the same one, which was, what was it again? 3x plus 2x plus 1. So if you had 3x plus 2 and x plus 1, what the chart method is say, imagine you had an area. You had a rectangle. Okay? You have a rectangle, and the 3x plus 2 is your length, and the x plus 1 is your width. And what we're going to do is we're just going to split it up by terms. 3x there, and 2 here. And on this side, if I had an x plus 1, I could put an x there and a 1 there. So we're breaking up the terms. And then it just becomes a multiplication chart. You fill in all the boxes. What happens when I multiply 3x times x? I get 3x squared. That's the same as the first ones when we did FOIL. What happens when I do the 3x and the 1? I get 3x. That was the same as our outside ones. The x times the 2 would give me 2x. That's the same as my inside ones. And the 1 and the 2 would be 2, is the same as my last ones. So it does exactly the same thing as FOIL, but it takes more space in your notes, which is one of the reasons why people tend to go to the other technique more often. And then once you're done, you would look at this and write out your final answer. You would combine your like terms. Again, the 2x and the 3x are like terms, so you get plus 5x plus 2. So this is the chart method. Sometimes when we multiply bigger things, like a trinomial times a binomial or a trinomial times a trinomial, the chart is nice, but you can still do it with the arrow method or the FOIL method as well. And my least favorite method is algebra tiles. So you could actually draw out 3x plus 2 you could actually draw out an x tile and a 1 tile. I tend to make them solid if they're positive. And you could draw out 3 x tiles. Wow, that x one got a little short. And 2 1 tiles. And shade them in. And then say to yourself, well, what would happen if I would have to fill in this rectangle with these lengths? Well, here I would get big squares, which would be x squared tiles. And they would be positive because I have 2 positive tiles multiplied together. I'd have 3 of those. Here, when I multiply 1 by an x, I'll get an x tile, an x tile, an x tile. And here, when you multiply the x by the 1, you'll get x tiles vertically. And 2 1 tiles in the end. So once you filled the rectangle, what is the rectangle made of? Well, I have 3 x squared tiles. I have 5 x tiles, and I have 2 1s. And this takes the most space in your notes and is the most tedious to do. So that's why I put it as method 3. But it does have a nice connection to how area and multiplying works. Now, what's really cool with FOIL and the chart method is that you can use it to multiply numbers that maybe are outside of your times table quite easily. So for example, I'll go back to here, and instead of 3x plus 2 and x plus 1, let's do 2 numbers that you don't multiply very often, say 17 times 19. Probably don't multiply those every day. And that's hard to multiply because you don't know your 17 times table, you don't know your 19 times table. But I can write 17 as 10 plus 7, and I can write 19 as 10 plus 9. And now if I were to FOIL, all of the multiplications are easy because they're all within my 10 times table. So FOIL, first ones, I'm going to get 100. Outside ones, I'm going to get 90. Inside ones, I'm going to get 70. And last one, 7 times 9, I'm going to get 63. And that's not hard to add up. 90 plus 70 is 160. Plus 63 will be 223. Plus 100 will give me 323. And with relative ease, I can multiply 17 times 19. Probably easier than other techniques that you might have learned. So it can be very useful for multiplying regular numbers as well. But the reason the method was created was because of algebra. Because normally, if you had this as a question, you would do order of operations. You do 10 plus 7, get 17, 10 plus 9, get 19, take out your calculator, go 19 times 17 and get 323. So FOIL this one out, I'll give you a head start. Okay, let's see how you did. Negative 2x squared plus x plus 2x minus 1. Combine the like terms. Negative 2x squared plus 3x minus 1. Another one to try. This will be the last one, and then I'll let you have the last 5 minutes to work on homework. If all of a sudden you have a super free night, I'll give you the homework that goes with this if you want to work ahead. But we'll start tomorrow's class working on some of these again. All right, let's see how you did. 2x times 3x will give me 6x squared minus 10x plus 21x minus 35. 6x squared plus 11x, once I combine those like terms, minus 35. And the technique works out pretty good, and it's always, you always combine those outside and inside terms in the middle. And going from here to here, again, we use the acronym, we often just call it foiling, but mathematically you'd say we're distributing. What's going to come tomorrow is, and you can think about it, can you come up with a technique if I gave you this? Going backwards is going to be called factoring. And that's much more difficult. If I gave you 6x squared plus 11x minus 35, could you come up with 2x plus 7 and 3x minus 5? It gets a little tricky, but see if you can come up with a technique that would make that work. So I said I would tell you what the homework was, even though we have some more examples in this. If you wanted to work ahead, there it is. And tomorrow we'll do more of this and start learning factoring.